Now the first method to remotely access X server based application or GUI applications running on X server is known as X host. The command is X host, and once you issue that command, it will tell you something about that whether the X control is enabled or not. It's like if we have a client over here which is running X server client, and the server is over here which is running X server, and it is kind of high-end server that can process heavy processing, maybe different graphic intensive applications, but this one is not that smart or not that high-end PC. So what we want is that the GUI applications should run over to this server, and we should be able to access those applications or their GUI interface remotely. So we can issue the command xhost onto this client over here, and this will show us that you see there's a security parameter in here as well, is that let's say I do not want those applications to be visible onto this client. Let me just write this one, client. So it would be a security breach if somebody from outside is able to throw its GUI or X server output onto the client. We might not want to do that. So by default, there's a restriction that the display or the X11 display is not acceptable to any client. And once you issue that command, and I'll show you in a while what do I mean by that. Once you issue that xhost command, it shows you that the access control is enabled on the client, and it will not display by default any GUI that is thrown into it. So we need to enable it. We can enable it by xhost space plus sign, which will disable it, disable the access control, and any server or any other I should say the X11 based computer that is running and it can throw its output GUI based application output onto the client. Another way to restrict it so that only specific X servers are able to throw their display onto the client is that you can type in xhost plus space then plus and then the IP address or the name of the server. Of course, that name should be resolvable, but if it's not, you can simply type in the IP address of that particular host. Once you do that, that server will be now that client will be able to accept the GUI from that particular server. Now once that part is done, you need to log into the server using your client. Like you can use telnet protocol for that purpose or SSH protocol for that purpose. So you can initiate a telnet or SSH session onto this server, and once you log into it, you need to give the command which is export the display. So the command would be export display is all capital, and then you can type in, by default the display would be 0 or 0.0. So that means that the server is displaying its GUI application on its local desktop. But if you want to change it, and since we want to change it, we want that display to be exported onto the client. So what we will be doing is that instead of 0.0, we will be exporting the display as the IP address of the client. Let's say the IP address is ip.client, whatever it is, it could be any IP address. So IP address of the client, then full colon, and then 0.0. Once you do that, once you telnet into the X server or SSH into the X server and you issue this command, that would mean that if you are trying to open now any GUI application from that very terminal after issuing this command, then that GUI application will be shown onto the client desktop. Now I have mentioned all this thing over here just because historical perspective, this is not used anymore. You can issue the commands, but they are not, and they will work as well. In some environments where you have configured X11 server, they will work, but nowadays we do not use this xhost command anymore, and one of the main reason is because of the security as well. And also we use the protocol SSH, which is secure shell, which now has embedded functionality to remotely access the X server applications as well. So once we SSH to a machine, we just give it a special switch which is -X and then the IP address of the machine. And once we do that, then it means this X minus this capital X, not small x. This capital X means that we are trying to grab the X server session as well from the server that we have connected with. So now let's come on to the GUI or the command interface, and let's see how it's all working. So let me just pull up the Ubuntu desktop environment. So this is the virtual machine that I'm running, and I'm also hosting it on another Ubuntu machine. So since I prefer to use Linux environment, so that's the scenario. I'm not using Windows machine for my hosting or the host operating system. I'm using Ubuntu as the host machine and using CentOS or Ubuntu as the guest virtual machine. So anyway, I have enabled the SSH service in the guest operating system. If I show you by typing in sudo then service and then SSH and status, and it's asking for the password which I have given it. So it is saying that SSH service is running, but let's also double check it by using the process command. So I type in psaux, then pipe sign, and then grab the SSH daemon process. So we see that SSH daemon is running. Now what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna pull up another terminal which is running on my host operating system, and let's try to SSH this server. But before we do that, let me also just check the IP address by typing in ifconfig. So IP address is 57.20. Now let me pull up the terminal which is here. This is the host operating system. Its name is OS, and this is the virtual operating system or guest operating system on VirtualBox, which is named vUbuntu. So let's pull up my terminal and let's try to, let me show you other commands as well, which I talked about, which was xhost. So if I type in xhost and press enter, we see that it is saying that access control enabled, only authorized clients can connect. Now if you want to completely disable the control, I can type in xhost plus, or if I want to allow only specific hosts, then I can type in let's say xhost plus, and then afterwards give this IP address which is 192.168.57.20. Now if I do that, you see that is giving me that this is being added to access control list. So now if I telnet or SSH from here to this machine and then export the display, ideally we should be able to get the display imported onto this side. But as I said, that this method is not used anymore. So what we are going to do is that we are going to use the SSH based X forwarding. So I type in SSH, then I type in -X, and afterwards I need to give the IP address of the machine that I want to connect to using SSH protocol. So I also need to type in the username, which is ABC, and after that the IP address is 192.168.57.20. Now once I do that, I press enter and just give it a while it processes the keys for SSH, Okay, so now it is asking for the password. Now once I give the password, I am logged in. Now how to check that whether it is working or not? You see, let me just come up over here, and let's say if I come on to applications, and these are all the graphical based applications. So if I come on to, let's say, accessories, and click on this calculator has opened up, and you see this calculator is running at the moment in the virtual machine and not on my actual host machine. So let's close this one, and let's try to open up this GUI application from command line of the guest operating system. So I type in gcalc tool, I believe. Okay, so gcalc tool, and we see that this application has again popped up. Now coming on to the host operating system, now I have accessed the guest operating system, and I have also enabled X forwarding. So once I issue the gcalc command, ideally what should happen is that this GUI application, which is gcalculator, should be opening on my host operating system and not on the guest operating system. That is actually what we want. So I type in gcalc tool, and now the application has opened up on my host operating system. You see, these are the boundaries. If I tell you that these are the boundaries of the guest operating system, but you see this application is going out, so it is now running on my host operating system that I am moving it around. Similarly, there is another application like LibreOffice. Yeah, we can open that one as well. So I type in LibreOffice, and this application will also, it will be processed in the guest operating system or in the remote, as you can say, in the remote operating system, but its GUI, it will be forwarded onto the client that from where we have connected to the server. So I type in LibreOffice, and LibreOffice is popping up. Now, a truly great application and a truly great feature that we can employ for remotely accessing the GUI based applications on an X server. That's all there is to it. I hope you have learned from this video, and I would like to thank you for viewing.